All right, it really is very quiet. So we're going to get started. And as you've joined us for the last, if you've joined us for the last couple of weeks, Shawn and I have been here. This is our third week together on a Thursday, Greensboro Chamber of Commerce Think Ahead Thursday Daily Action Call. I'm Luann Flanders-Steck. I am the Executive Vice President of Entrepreneurship for Launch Greensboro and the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce. And we welcome you today. As we've mentioned almost every day, please, if you haven't already done so, complete the census. We really do get major funding and support both from a legislative standpoint and federal funding and congressional representation standpoint. It makes a huge difference to our community, so please remember to complete your census. And as always, this call's being recorded. So make sure that you share the links to the YouTube page. You can find those links on our greensboro.org COVID-19 page, where also you can find additional COVID-19 resources, as well as our new Small Business Restart Guide, built in partnership with none other than Shawn Straub, who's here with us today. So today's call is going to be very interactive. Shawn and I are going to have a Q&A chat on human resources issues. So what we'd like for you to do is continue to provide questions for us. I've got some, but please include your questions in the chat box, as Holly has mentioned. So for those of you who have not met Shawn before and haven't joined us before, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about her and her firm. Her firm is Alt HR Partners, and it's an HR consulting firm that helps small to medium-sized businesses with their HR needs, from fractional HR to risk mitigation. She supports businesses through times like these in their day-to-day operations. She's got 20 years of experience in the human relations area within many industries. She's got a bachelor's and master's in psychology, and she actually holds the two highest HR certifications from the National Human Resources Certification Institute and the Society for Human Resource Management. As she has the last 2 weeks, we are going to cover a lot of material. So make sure that you take your notes, pay attention, ask the questions in the chat box. And so let's get started. So Shawn, welcome again, and thank you for supporting this for 3 weeks in a row as we think ahead Thursday. Now that we're kind of slowly moving back to work, I just got back from prepping Collab, our co-working space, to open next week. And so I've got all of these questions running through my head about safety and cleanliness and all of that stuff. And as businesses open, they are worried about their employees too. So last week, you talked about the Department of Labor making changes and all of these rules around all of these programs changing on a regular basis. So yesterday, you told me, the Department of Labor released some additional guidance. Can you give us a quick update on that? And then I've got some questions based on it as well.
Yes. So the way that this has been working, can you hear me? Hello?
Barely.
I can hear you.
Yep.
Oh no. I'm going to bring the laptop a little bit closer, hopefully it helps. So the way that this has been working is that the Department of Labor had put out the laws that we're all familiar with at this point, and then on almost a bi-weekly or weekly basis, they add to their frequently asked questions page on their website. And that is the way that we've been seeing how we can actually utilize these laws on a day-to-day basis. So people will either write in with questions, or the Department of Labor will hear that people are having issues with actually implementing these laws, and then they will give guidance on how these things should be implemented. So this week, two of the big things that they talked about were, and which I've heard on a regular basis, so my employee has been teleworking for the last 2 months, And now that we're ready to come back to work, suddenly they're unable to telework anymore. Do I need to support that? Are they able to go out on that leave of absence, saying that, now they need to care for their child and they're unable to telework? And the Department of Labor was very clear that situations can change, and that even if somebody had been teleworking for the last 8-9 weeks and now tells you that they can no longer telework, that you need to honor that. And that you do need to give them that leave of absence that they're entitled to for having to care for their child. And they went even further to say that basically you need to believe them at face value. That while you can ask questions about, well, why has the situation changed? What's different now than it has been in the last 9 weeks? You can't really probe much deeper than that, nor can you require additional documentation. You can ask for it, but you can't actually require it from the employee. So that was one of the big things that came out yesterday.
And Shawn, this is related to, so Shawn, this relates to the Emergency Family Medical Leave Act, one of the acronyms.
Yes, the FFCRA leaves, the Family for Coronavirus Relief Acts, both of those leaves of absences that include provisions for people who can't come to work because of childcare issues, whether that's their school being closed or the actual place where they care for their child being closed. Yes.
Got it.
And then the other big part that came out this week too is the type of documentation that can be requested. So all along, there has not been guidance as to exactly how these leaves should be documented if someone were to go out on a leave of absence. And the Department of Labor came out this week saying that's intentional and we're not going to give you any additional guidance on that. You can ask for documentation, but you can't require it. And their entire point of that, and they said this in their guidance, is they want people to be out of work if they need to be out of work, and they want people to be able to seek medical care if they need it. But at the same time, they understand that right now that might be really difficult for people. And they don't want employers to require people to bring in medical documentation. So again, it's that the Department of Labor is really encouraging you to take your employee's word for whatever the situation may be, whether it's childcare or medical issues.
Okay. Well, okay, that's a lot to think about. Deborah asked if someone's on unemployment because of layoff or furlough, how does the new FMLA affect them and their employer if they or an immediate family member gets the coronavirus? So if they're on unemployment,
it doesn't.
And an immediate family member gets the coronavirus.
No. So if you've laid off
Sorry,
or
I've got
furloughed your
internet
employee,
issues.
you no longer have any. Okay.
Try again.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Oh. Yep.
Yes. Okay. So if you have laid off or furloughed, you have no obligation to them under the new leave laws. So if somebody is furloughed or laid off, you don't have any obligation to provide them with any type of leave of absence or any pay because they or their family member is sick. It's only if they're actively working for you that you have the obligation to pay them one of the new leaves.
Okay, great. So if you don't provide, this is the question that keeps running through my head, if you don't provide a paid leave to someone that has asked for it based on something, and they complain to the Department of Labor, what are the risk factors there that business owners need to think about?
So if somebody is entitled to one of these paid leaves and you have decided not to provide them with that leave for whatever that reason is, and then they do complain about it, the Department of Labor actually, again, just came out this week and said that they will not only request back wages for what you should have paid them. So what we've learned is that you either have to pay them their full salary at a cap of $500 a day or 2/3 of their salary at a cap. They said that those past wages, they will collect all of their past wages. So whatever they could have earned if they were just working for you, they will at the minimum request that you pay them that amount of money. And they've been sort of silent on other things, but they have said that it's similar to if you don't provide someone with an FMLA leave, that they could press charge it, they could file a case against you sort of on a similar level for that. So there will, I'm sure, be fines as well as lawsuits about this if companies are choosing not to provide that leave.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wondered about. So can we stick to FMLA and the emergency federal medical, whatever the EMF-LEA, the acronym soup is like making me crazy. So it's like,
yeah.
So you've had some other questions, and I've had some other questions. The alphabet soup. If you only have 20 employees, do you have to provide FMLA to everyone now?
No, you don't. And actually, I have, I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to share my screen for a second. So this is all of the current leaves that you may need to provide for your employees. And I divided it up between 1 to 49 employees, 50 to 500, and then over 500. And so the first thing that you can see there is our traditional FMLA leave that has been around for 20 years. That FMLA leave is still only for if you have 50 or more employees working for you. And that has not changed. So they still have to work for you for 12 months, 1,250 hours. You're not required to pay them for anything on that. That leave requirement is you have to keep their job open for 12 weeks of protected leave for everything from they have a baby, they're sick, they have to care for someone else who's sick, or military reasons. Now, the FMLA expansion, you'll notice, moves to the left. So that is for employers that have 1 employee to 500 employees. And this is one of the new ones, the FMLA expansion, the emergency FMLA leave. This is the one where if somebody's worked for you for 30 or more days, then you are required to give them a leave for up to 12 weeks if they need to care for their minor child who does not have any other means of being cared for, whether that's their school's closed or daycare's closed, summer camps are closed. And that one is they have to be out of work for 12 weeks. So you have to give them the opportunity to be out of work for 12 weeks. And that one has a pay requirement that for 10 of those weeks, you have to pay them at 2/3 of their regular salary. Then we have the UPSLA League, the Emergency Paid Sick Leave Act. That one is also for 1 to 500 employees. That one, there are no employee qualifications, which means that if someone started working for you yesterday and tomorrow they get sick, then you are required to give them this leave of absence. And this leave of absence can be for 10 days, for 2 weeks, and it could be for their own health issue related to COVID-19, caring for someone else who may have COVID-19, or for childcare issues. And that one as well, you have to pay them 2/3 of their salary all the way up to their full salary, depending on the reason why they are out on leave.
Okay, so this kind of all goes back for full circle to the first kind of question, the direction the Department of Labor gave earlier as well, related to how all of this works. So this helps explain that even greater, which is helpful. So from that standpoint, does this include part-time employees?
Yes.
Okay.
So the FMLA expansion and the EPSLA are for full or part-time employees. There is no hour minimum on it. So it in no way says like they have to work at least 10 hours. It's for anyone who is an employee of yours, regardless of how little or how much they work.
Okay. Okay. So that hopefully clears some of those questions up. Hopefully. And they don't change the rules again. We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.
Fingers crossed. So
fingers crossed.
I think that what we've seen with all of the rule changes, and again, the DOL will come out every couple of weeks, is that they're just making it more expansive and easier for the employee to access. So whatever, if you're just going to go with like rule of thumb or sort of, what should I do in this situation? The answer should be, what is the easiest way for my employee to access this? And, what can I do to make their life better, easier with as little paperwork as possible? And that's probably going to be your right answer 9 times out of 10, because every time that the DOL is coming out with something, that seems to be sort of a trend of what is happening.
And then how does all of this relate to if you offer paid time off and vacation and sick days and all of that good stuff?
A couple weeks ago, the DOL came out with that, saying it doesn't matter, that this is a benefit that's in addition to whatever benefit you're currently offering. So whatever benefit you're currently offering, this is in addition to that. So you can't say like, well, I already give my employees, 12 weeks of sick time, then I don't have to provide this. No, the DOL is saying that this is in addition to whatever it is that you're providing.
Okay.
And then I'm going to make it a little more complicated in that.
Go for it.
You saw that in some instances, you're only paying like 2/3 of the employee's salary as opposed to a full. The DOL is saying that for that other 1/3, you can supplement it with whatever benefits you may offer. So vacation, sick time, anything like that. So that way the employee is receiving their full salary. 2/3 of it is government mandated. 1/3 would be from you as the employer, whatever like sick pay or vacation pay the employee may have.
Okay, great. Well, we'll see what happens next week.
Yes.
Oh gosh. So as I was preparing and as the chamber has prepared to reopen offices, and we're opening CoLab next week, we're thinking about all of the PPE. So I'm going to say we have erred on the side of being super cautious, and we're providing PPE for the members of CoLab. Do employers have to do that for their employees?
So I'm going to share another screen with you for that one, which is this one, the OSHA risk pyramid. So OSHA has determined that all employers fall into one of these 4 categories: the low risk, medium, high, and very high. High and very high, in most instances, yes, you have to provide PPE for your employees. Medium, lower risk, it's something where they're encouraging you, again, sort of like the DOL, same concept, like whatever you can do to keep your employees safe and healthy, we want you to do. And so if you can provide PPE, that's great. It's not the law though, unless you're high, very high. Now, the OSHA has also on their website, every industry has its own section that you can go to, and it will give you exactly what it is that they're expecting from you. Now, this I pulled from retail workers. So you can see that they actually believe that most retail workers are in the lower or medium risk category. And a lot has to do with how many people are you interacting with and what is the potential that you may come into contact with COVID-19. So for very high, it would be people who are actually dealing with sick individuals who have COVID-19. So like a healthcare worker who they're directly dealing with it. Whereas if you're working in retail, it's medium low. If you're working in an office environment, it's definitely low, cautious. And so what they're recommending is that while no, you don't have to do it, they would very much like you to take all precautions necessary so that way you and your employees stay safe at work. And I think it's great if we have decided to be able to provide things for individuals, because it will just help in the long run with community transmission and to make sure your employees stay healthy. And then, from a business owner selfish standpoint, the safer you keep your employees, the more they're going to be at work, and the more that your business can get back to work.
Okay, so I'm gonna, can you full screen that? Because you've already shut it down.
Oh, sure.
Or is that included in the restart guide by chance?
Yes, this is in the restart guide. Yep.
Then we're good to go.
Is in the restart guide. Okay.
Great, because I was just thinking that I couldn't read it. I need my reading
I'm
glasses.
sorry.
So it's okay.
Yes. No, all of this is
fine.
that is all in the restart guide, as well as within the restart guide. Oh, and Holly just posted it on there. There's also the exact website of where you can go to look on OSHA for the information that you may need for your particular business to determine where you are on that risk pyramid.
Wonderful. Okay. Now, let's continue with this employee coverage concept. Do we have to test all of our employees? And what if I want to test all the employees? Can I?
Okay, so no, you do not need to test all of your employees. If you wanted to test your employees, that's certainly your prerogative. However, you're getting into some dicey, you're sort of walking a line. So the Department of Labor, the EEOC, that's the Equal Employment Opportunity Council, has come out and said, sort of like all bets are off with some things. So in the past, we never would have been able to ask somebody if they were sick or take their temperature, or if they had been sick in the past. And at this point, they're saying, like, the public good sort of outweighs the past guidance from the Americans with Disabilities Act. And those things are definitely fine. You can, take people's temperature. You can ask if they've been exposed to COVID-19. You can ask if they have symptoms of COVID-19. Now, once you get into testing, you're walking a fine line in that you're really getting a lot of medical information from the individual.
Right.
You can't do that, but you need to be careful of things like HIPAA, and then also the Americans with Disabilities Act. And so you want to make sure that if you are choosing to do that, that you're partnering with somebody so that way you can get a waiver from people so people understand what it is that they are doing and what they're submitting to. Additionally, no matter what you're doing, I highly, highly would not recommend making your employees pay for it. So if you are an employer who's decided we're going to test everybody every week or whatever you have decided, you should be paying for that. Under no circumstance would I ever recommend saying that the employee needs to, pay for it themselves and bringing the results of their test. Even the now popular antibody tests where you go to LabCorp and you can get an antibody, anyone can get it. You don't need a doctor's order. If that's something that you want your employees to do, it needs to be something where they're fully acknowledging what that means and the information that you're going to receive from that, and that you as the employer would be the one paying for it. But at the same time, I urge people not to go down that path, because I truly believe that after this is all over, we really are going to be seeing a lot of lawsuits, and some of them could be around privacy issues. They could be around, the Americans with Disabilities Act. And we want to do whatever we can to protect ourselves and to protect our employees. But at the same time, if we can avoid being too invasive, I would strongly recommend that, just to protect yourself and your business as you move forward.
Well, and from that standpoint, thinking about HIPAA compliance, that's just kind of crazy. Can even taking temperatures, is it advised not to keep track, and just if someone is over a certain temperature, they can't come into work? Is that the best route, and not tracking all of the temperatures?
So that is an interesting question, and I have heard different responses to that. So from the Department of Labor, from the EEOC, we have heard you can totally do that. You can track temperatures, you can have a log, you can have people sign off on it. And at this point in time, they don't seem to be raising any red flags about that. Now, I'm not saying that 2 months from now, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, why did you do that? You totally shouldn't have. And then I've heard from some attorneys as well, an attorney that I work with really closely, Ryan Luft, and he is actually providing HIPAA notices for his clients, so that way the employees can sign off on it, just making sure that we're covered from all standpoints, that, yes, we are recording your information, we do have this, so that way everybody's sort of in the know about it. And I think that that's really the best course of action if that's something that you do want to do within your workplace. It's about communication, and it's about, just like any law that ever comes out, when it comes down to it, it's about, did the employee know that that's what was happening, and were they aware of what the consequences were, and can you prove it? So if you have all of that and we move forward with our best intent in mind, I think that you are moving down the right path, and that you're doing the right thing to keep everybody safe.
And then another question about testing. If employers require the testing and pay for it, do they get to see the results, or is that still doctor-patient privilege?
No, they should be able to see the results. But again, it would need to be something that your employee signs off on, that this, before the testing occurs, that they understand that, just like any other pre-employment, like if you were sending them for a drug screen or something like that.
Right.
Or, they're signing off yes, I'm taking this drug screen and I understand my employer is going to get the results. So I would follow sort of the same procedure.
And making sure that the only test that's being done is this one specific test, et cetera.
Yeah, 100%. I just read, because this is obviously everybody's talking about all of these kind of things. And there was another one of my favorite laws is GINA, the Genetic Information Act, where it prevents employers from receiving genetic information. And part of that is make sure you're not testing for anything. They go to LabCorp and they get a blood panel or something, and now you have all this information that you absolutely don't want to have. So yes, only antibody tests for COVID-19 if that's what you're testing for.
Okay, great. Thank you. So what if an employee is afraid to come back to work in phase 1 or even in phase 2, or how do you navigate that? I'm nervous about this.
Yeah, and that is a really good question, and it is not something that has been directly answered by the Department of Labor or the EEOC. However, it's been indirectly implied that you need to do whatever you can to accommodate individuals. So we often talk about physical disabilities. We're all very, somebody has a broken leg, and so it's easy to see I need to make an accommodation because they have a cast on their leg. But the reality is that we have all been through a lot mentally as part of this, and it may be exacerbating somebody's anxiety or depression or some other mental disability that somebody has that's a little bit more difficult for us to see. And so when someone says, I'm scared to come back to work, there may be more to it than they're just, don't want to come back to work.
Right.
They would, rather collect unemployment. And so what the advice and guidance has been, especially under the Americans with Disabilities Act, is probe a little bit deeper and find out exactly why they don't want to come back to work. And they may be entitled to some type of leave of absence instead of coming back to work. Now, the reality is if they refuse to come back to work and you have work for them, you may say, okay, well, if and when you're ready to return to work, give me a call. And if there's something available, we can put you on the schedule. But the advice really is to practice empathy, to practice grace, and to try to work with the individual to come up with something that you're both comfortable with, as opposed to just sort of like immediately writing somebody off that, oh, they're not interested in coming back to work, or I can't deal with it. But I mean, the reality is this is an ever evolving situation. And based on the guidance that we've gotten so far, I could very safely make the assumption that the employee would be in the right and the employer would not. If you have decided just to sort of cut ties with this person because they've said that they were scared and they didn't want to come back to work.
Okay, so I've got a couple more questions, but if anybody, and we're going to go just a few more minutes, but if anybody has a question, please make sure you put it in the chat box. There is so much to cover and so many details that it often makes me nervous that we're not going to get it all filled, and that's why we have the restart guide, so thank you. Now, there's lots of stuff here. How do we keep track of it? How in the world do we keep up with what we should be doing and what we shouldn't be doing, and how to manage all of the information?
Yes. That is a very good point. So it is my full-time job to keep up with this information. So I can imagine for when it's not your full-time job that this is really overwhelming and really difficult. So the best thing that I can tell you is to partner with somebody who this is their full-time job in order to be able to keep up with the information and to look to your government resources. The Chamber of Commerce has been really great in putting out updated information, and to follow government websites as opposed to perhaps news websites or things that you might see on the internet. I think there's a lot of confusing information out there, and a lot of outdated information, and that's nobody's fault as things are changing, minute by minute. But, if you decide to Google something and you get 10,000 results, go to the one that says .gov at the end for the best response to your question.
And you've talked a lot about keeping up with the FAQs, right?
Yeah, so the FAQs on the Department of Labor's website is where they usually on a weekly basis continue to add information. And it's written it's very easy to read the way that it's written. So at the very beginning, when the laws came out and we read through the laws, it's a lot of jargon and political and legal speak, but the way the FAQs are written, it's 100% just plain language and very easy to understand, and they really want they want people to understand, and that's the reason why they put that guidance out.
Great. So we got another question. And this is a big one, so you ready, Shawn?
Ready.
What liability issues should organizations take into consideration when planning to resume in-person gatherings?
Oh, in person. Wow, you're right. So I think that is a really complicated question, and I would direct you to the OSHA regulations on that, as well as CDC regulations on that. Now, while there isn't, like a law that says, what, aside from like our state mandated, like you can only have this many people in the room, OSHA and CDC isn't putting out any laws that says you can't have, team meetings or anything like that, but there is a lot of guidance in there. And I think as far as, like risk or the liability issues is that people get sick from these meetings, and then you as an employer or as the host are held accountable for that. So you want to do absolutely everything in your power to mitigate that risk, and to use any resources that you have from the CDC and from OSHA to do that, whether that's making sure that you maintain social distance even in gatherings, so that way you have I saw HQ had posted a picture where they took a lot of their chairs away. I know that you had said that Launch is doing the same thing. And so really just doing your best, because in the end, what might happen if there is some type of lawsuit saying like, I came to this meeting and I got sick, what you're going to want to do is be able to produce all the things that you did following CDC, OSHA guidelines of how you tried really hard to mitigate that risk.
So maybe a lot of pictures.
Pictures are great. Yeah, great for your social media account, but then they're also great to prove that, you know, you did your best to maintain this.
Right, right. Okay. Are there any other questions? My last question is kind of a funny one, but I gotta ask. Did anything happen today that we need to know about? Because it feels like it changes every day.
No, nothing happened today. Today was the ADA thing that came out. But no, nothing else happened today that I'm aware of.
Okay. And that's what you do, is keep up with this because you love it. Oh, and Brent,
today's not over yet. It's true, Brent. It's true. But yes, my job, my full-time job is, you know, to keep up with this and make sure that I am on top of it. And that's through a lot of newsletters and going to the Department of Labor's website and OSHA and CDC and making sure that I do have the latest information. And it's true, today isn't over yet. And, you know, in 2 weeks, if we listen to this, it's very possible that, you know, there's going to be more regulations. But as I said, everything that has come out so far, instead of going backwards, has just, or instead of making things smaller, has just gotten bigger.
Right.
So, you know, my overall advice, whenever you're thinking about this, is what is the most I can do to keep my employees safe and mitigate the risk to my business. And as long as you're thinking in sort of that biggest capacity, in most instances, you're probably on the right track.
Right. And that's one of the things that, as I was leaving CoLab today, it looks really odd because there's a chair at small tables. There's 2 chairs in a whole 10, 12-foot desk. And we're going to have tape that we've got this bright orange tape that's going to be on the floor. So it's just going to be odd for a time. And that's how we protect ourselves as business owners. So if there are any other questions, and I agree with Brent, thank you for all you're doing to keep us all in line.
Thank you.
Really, I know there's a couple of folks that you've really worked with closely, so, and we appreciate your time more than you know. It's been so beneficial to us and our community. So with that, we're going to wrap up, and I'm going to thank you again and thank everybody for being here today. I know that you all appreciate Shawn's expertise and the time that she spends on topics that we are not really keeping up with, I have to admit. But a few quick reminders: don't forget to do your census. And then tomorrow with the Friday Forum with Brent, our CEO, is going to be with North Carolina Representative Ashton Clemens. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow at 3 as she provides some updates from the state legislative perspective. And probably we'll have some fun questions for her as well. So thank you all for being here, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Have a good afternoon.
Bye.
Bye.